San Diego to witness the wonder and majesty that is the LGBT community of San Diego. You know, I've been on so many planes lately, I don't really know where I've been lately, so I apologize for that. Thank you so much for having me here today. I gotta tell you, I got the spirit sitting out there listening to Nicole Murray Ramirez. Make some noise for Nicole That is speaking the truth. And I stand before you today, a proud African-American transgender woman from a working class background, raised by a single mother. I stand before you today, an artist and an actress, an Emmy-nominated actress, a sister and a daughter, and I believe it's important to name the various intersecting components of my multiple identities, because I'm not just one thing. And neither are you, and when we miss the intersectional component, we are missing a huge part of the story of injustice, and we've heard a little bit of that today. We have to have justice for people of color, for people with disabilities, for poor and working people, and a lot of you have heard me say this before, but Dr. Cornel West reminds us that justice is what love looks like in public. Feeling so much love today. I feel like we can change the world with all the love we got here today. Yes, indeed. Spirit of Stonewall. Well, when I think about Stonewall, I think about people who were mentioned earlier by Fernando and others. People like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson. People like Miss Major, and people without whom I would not be standing before you today. When I think about Stonewall, I think about how earlier this year, when I mentioned this to a few people, a lot of folks did not know that Stonewall was about fighting gender policing and fighting for gender self-determination. A lot of folks, I was surprised, did not know that when Stonewall was raided 45 years ago, that the patrons were lined up, and if you were not wearing at least 3 articles of clothing associated with the gender that you were assigned at birth, you were arrested, because cross-dressing was illegal at the time. So Stonewall was about gender self-determination. It was about fighting for gender policing, fighting gender policing. Yes, indeed. And 45 years later, we are still fighting that fight. Still fighting that fight. In Phoenix, Arizona, there is a law called manifesting prostitution, which basically means that if you are a woman in a certain neighborhood dressed a certain way, you can be arrested on suspicion that you might be wanting to do sex work. And a young woman by the name of Monica Jones was arrested and convicted on this unconstitutional charge earlier this year. We gotta send a message to Phoenix, Arizona that this is not acceptable. Monica is going to be appealing this decision next month. We have to stand with Monica Jones. The spirit of Stonewall. If we really are about the spirit of Stonewall, we have to stand with Monica Jones. We have to talk about the fact that as we celebrate 45 years since the Stonewall riots, that five transgender women of color have been murdered in 41 days. In the month of June, 1 each week. Our lives are in danger simply for being who we are. What are we doing? What are we doing for transgender people, particularly trans women of color? We know the statistics. We know historically that trans women of color are the most in danger in this community. Last year, over 72% of all LGBTQ homicides were trans women. 67% were trans women of color.
Boo!
45 years after Stonewall, after people like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson and Miss Major fought the police for all of our freedoms, what are we doing for the inheritors of that legacy? We have to do better. We have to do better. And I gotta tell you, this has been an intense time for me. I'm personally experiencing some of the most amazing moments of my career. I mean, I'm the first openly transgender person to be nominated for an acting contest. I'm the first openly transgender person to be on the cover of Time magazine. But while these accomplishments are lovely for me personally and have given so much inspiration to people in our communities all over the world, it is important for us to remember that it is a state of emergency. A state of emergency for far too many trans people across this nation. And we have to do better. Your life should not be in danger simply for being who you are, and that is unfortunately the reality of far too many trans people's lives. I had the pleasure of meeting Miss Tracy Jada O'Brien earlier today, and when I meet she identified herself this way. So I'll say, when I get to meet one of our trans elders, I get really emotional, and I'm really moved by it. And she said some lovely words to me, and for me, it's like, how do we honor the legacy of survivors like Miss O'Brien, who have been doing this work for decades? What are we going to do to honor that legacy and to honor the legacy of Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson? I met a young person by the name of Davy Rahija last year on Spirit Day in South Carolina. And Davy spoke on the same program that I did. In Davy's opening remarks, Davy said that I am both a survivor and an inheritor of cultural trauma. I've been both a survivor and a perpetrator of cultural violence. Now, Davy's 22 years old, and I thought this was so brilliant because in this moment, Davy reminded me and everyone in the room that each and every one of us has the capacity to be an oppressor. Each and every one of us. So it is really our jobs to constantly ask ourselves, am I assuming the position of oppressor? Am I? Many of us have witnessed a tremendous amount of infighting in our community over the past, 45 years really, but particularly over the past several months. And there's this great phrase that a lot of you know that I like to remind us of. The phrase is hurt people, hurt people. Hurt people, hurt people. And all of the infighting that happens in our community, I think it's because we're in a lot of pain and we don't know what to do with that pain, because discrimination hurts. Dealing with injustice hurts. Having your life be in danger simply for being who you are hurts. Being denied basic human rights is deeply painful. But how do we create spaces of healing so we do not direct that energy and pain onto each other? I believe that requires each and every one of us to look at ourselves and to look at the pain that we may or may not be in and figure out ways to heal from it. That is not about lashing out at each other, because there's a bigger enemy, honey. There's a bigger enemy out there that's trying to take us down, and they want us fighting each other so we won't fight the good fight. Spirit of Stonewall, when I think about Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, and Miss Major, I think about a legacy of trans people helping each other. You guys know about STAR, right? STAR was an organization that Sylvia and Marsha started, Street Transvestites Action Revolutionaries. in the early 1970s. And what they did, they were street hustlers. Sylvia Bird and Marsha P. Johnson were street queens who hustled. And they would go and they would hustle for the day and rent a room for the night, and they would let all of their trans sisters who were homeless stay there. They did for each other. Miss Major is part of that legacy of doing for each other. That is the legacy that we inherit when we talk about the spirit of Stonewall. So I want to leave here today with that spirit and charge each and every one of you to ask yourselves, what can I do for my LGBTQ brother and sister, so that I can be more loving and create a more just world, so we can fight this good fight together, always together. Happy Pride, everybody. I love you all. I love you all. I love you all.